Do you think of yourself as a perfectionist? People with perfectionism tend to only do so because they worry what other people think of them. They value how other people perceive them. They're driven by what they achieve or what they do for other people. And of course, all of this can cause uncomfortable emotions and difficult feelings, which can lead to a heightened sense of stress or anxiety, low moods, and that in turn can be a trigger for us to drink. I'm Simon Chapple, the Quit Alcohol Coach, and today I'm going to share with you 10 signs that you might be a perfectionist. And in the next video, I'm going to share some tips to help you let go of perfectionism. So make sure you stay right to the end, and then you can get the link to the video that will give you all the tips you need to move forward and move through any perfectionist traits. Now, I'm the author of 2 books, The Sober Survival Guide and How to Quit Alcohol in 50 Days. If you haven't read either of those, I'd invite you to check them out. You can find them both on Amazon. And if you need help quitting drinking, look out for my regular newsletters. You can join on my website, where you'll get information about the latest workshops and boot camps. And you can always join my Stop Drinking program, which gives you 14 days totally free to try it out. The website address is on the screen right now. Again, if you're looking for extra support on your journey to becoming alcohol free, it's the perfect accompaniment. It's going to give you everything that you need in terms of support, tools, learning and tactics, along with live coaching with myself and other coaches who are experts on everything you need to know about quitting drinking. And before we dive into the 10 signs that you might be a perfectionist, make sure you subscribe to my channel by clicking the red subscribe button on the screen right now. You also need to click the bell icon, and that will make sure that you get notified every time there's a new video from my channel. There's new videos every Tuesday and every Thursday. I'm passionate about quitting drinking. I'm here to help anyone who wants to become sober and change their life. So let's talk about perfectionism and share 10 things that are sure signs you're probably a perfectionist. Now, there are 3 types of perfectionism. The first is self-oriented perfectionism, which is the internal desire to be perfect. Try and notice which one of these applies to you, because it will help you as you become more aware. The more aware you can become, the more you can notice those perfectionist traits, catch yourself, hit the pause button and make a conscious choice to adapt your behaviour. Sure, it takes practice, but being aware is the first step towards change. The second type of perfectionism is socially prescribed perfectionism, which is where we have a strong desire to live up to other people's expectations. Very often, our expectations of what those people expect are actually totally off the mark, and we're telling ourselves internal stories that may or may not be true. So pay attention if you're trying hard to live up to the expectations of other people. And of course, there's a big difference between high achieving and doing well in your career, for example, and perfectionism that dogs you and makes you feel like a failure if you don't come up to the mark. So notice what's going on for you. I recommend using a journal and paying close attention to your own experiences. Again, awareness is what's going to help get you through this, and a journal is a great way to stay aware. And the third type of perfectionism is other-oriented perfectionism, which is where we expect other people to come up to our own perfectionist standards, where we become angry or frustrated if other people aren't as good as we are or aren't as perfect as we are. Again, notice if that's coming up for you. So start to look for the gap between your own high standards and reality. Because very often when we're perfectionists, and absolutely I was a perfectionist and I still have those traits come into my life even now, but I'm very aware of them and I take the time to consider them and think about my actions and the consequences and the feelings and emotions that come up when that behaviour comes into play. Now, you may already be aware that you have perfectionist traits, but it'd be great to know how many out of 10 you get, how many apply to you. And please do put that in the comments, share how many out of 10 applied to you. And again, that's going to help you become more aware. Noticing the specific traits is going to give you a deeper level of awareness that will enable you to notice and to make changes as appropriate when you notice that behaviour coming out within you. So the first trait of perfectionism behaviour to pay attention to is all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking. There's no grey area. That's not on the table. It's not open to debate. It's one way or the other. And very often with perfectionist behaviour, we will stay away from things that push us outside of our comfort zone through fear of failure. So we tend to go for the all or the nothing, and we'll walk away from things that may challenge our perfectionist thinking because we feel that actually we might not be able to be perfect. So pay attention to all or nothing thinking and know that there is a middle ground, there is a grey area, and very often for perfectionists that grey area can feel really uncomfortable. The only way to get comfortable with that is to start to make the uncomfortable feel comfortable by spending some time in that place and getting used to that grey area. Know that it's okay. The sky won't fall in if you're not all or nothing. There's a middle ground and it's okay to be there at times. The second sign of perfectionism is when you're highly critical, either of other people or of yourself. Often with me it was both, but mostly it was towards myself. I'd direct that criticism inwards and tell myself that I wasn't good enough and I couldn't achieve the things that I wanted to, and I would never be perfect. And perfectionism is an illusion. It's something that we're constantly chasing but we'll never ever truly get. So if you find yourself being highly critical, take a moment, reflect upon that, use your journal and write it down and explore it with absolute curiosity. The third sign of perfectionist behaviour is when you have unrealistic standards. Standards that only you can meet, and very often you probably don't meet them. And then you beat yourself up with negative self-talk. And again, those unrealistic standards can apply to other people, other situations, other behaviours. So notice if this is coming up in your life. The fourth sign of perfectionist behaviour is when we're heavily focused on results, and we can allow results to define us. Instead of stripping away the material things in our lives and our career and noticing who we really are, who is that person without all that stuff, without all those results, we allow results to define us. We allow them to drive our emotions and drive our mood. For example, if you work in a sales job, maybe you feel really happy when you're getting plenty of sales and you have a benchmark for perfectionism. But if you don't get many sales, it causes you to be in a bad mood. It drives your emotions. And there can be other types of results, not just attached to careers either. So notice if results are playing a big part in your life, and if results are linked to your emotions. That's probably a sure sign of perfectionist behaviour. The fifth sign of perfectionist behaviour is a big one that played out in my own life, and that's fear of failure. We can be petrified of failing. We can beat ourselves up with negative self-talk and inner dialogue that puts ourselves down. And the only way to overcome that fear of failure is actually to allow yourself to fail and then to feel the feelings of failure and be okay with it. Get comfortable with it. So if you spot opportunities where you can consciously allow yourself to fail, obviously not in a way that's going to cause huge negative consequences, then absolutely do that. If there's particular sports or games that you don't enjoy losing at, and you get angry when you lose, allow yourself to lose. Notice how that feels. Learn to lose with grace. Spot where this plays out in your own life and take the time to actually sit with the feelings and allow it to happen. There's nothing wrong with failure, and in fact if you've got children, teaching them that it's okay to fail and failure will happen is actually a really healthy parenting technique. The sixth sign of perfectionist behaviour is when you struggle to relax. Now this can play out with other types of behaviour too, but it is another sign of being a perfectionist. If you find it hard to just sit in stillness, to relax, to feel calm, to meditate, to take time for yourself because you're always striving to achieve your perfectionist goals, that's another sign that you may well be a perfectionist. The seventh sign of perfectionist is actually kind of the opposite. It's procrastination. And often we can procrastinate through fear of failure. We don't want to get started on a project because we fear we'll fail. We don't want to get involved in a relationship because we think it will go wrong and it won't meet our perfectionist standards. So we end up sabotaging our own lives through procrastination. We don't jump in with both feet because we think it won't be perfect. Well, I'd invite you to take that leap of faith. I'd want you to step forward. And if things aren't completely perfect, I'd want you to learn to get okay with that. And that's what I'm going to show you in the next video, which has all the tips you need to move through perfectionism and start to be okay with being perfectly imperfect. The eighth sign of perfectionist behaviour is when we struggle to share or feel our feelings and emotions, and this can play out with lots of other behaviours too, and I see it time and time again in the people that I do sobriety coaching with, where they really have become disconnected to their feelings and emotions. And I've shared the emotion wheel, which you can see on the screen now, with you several times in the past, but this is a great tool to get started with connecting with how you really feel at any given point in time. And I'd invite you to just check in with this when you notice your feelings shift and start to label and name your feelings and emotions. That's a great way to get started. And then as you start to name and become aware of your feelings, you can start to explore where they've come from. But very often people who are perfectionists are using that as a distraction to stay away from uncomfortable feelings. And often those feelings and emotions are linked to things from our past, often our childhood, maybe trauma or emotional neglect, which I've spoken about in some of my other videos. But the only way to move through this stuff is to become aware of it and to start facing into it. Just like alcohol, we can use perfection as a distraction technique and as a coping mechanism that we go to when those uncomfortable feelings start to rise in us. And we often don't even realise that's what happens. We're just subconsciously moving towards perfectionism because it feels like a safe place. And that's often because the uncomfortable feelings are starting to bubble within us. Maybe something's triggered us. Often it's to do with our families of origin, and you can find other videos on my channel all about that, specifically about trauma and childhood emotional neglect. And I'm excited to tell you that my new book, How to Heal Your Inner Child, is released in December 2021. So if you feel that you've got things from your past that you'd like to explore and gently unpackage, this is the book for you. The ninth sign of perfectionism is defensiveness. If you find that you're quick to leap to your own defense, to defend your values and defend your beliefs, even when they might not be quite right or you haven't really put much thought into them, that's a sure sign of perfectionist behaviour. So notice how often you become defensive. Notice what type of comments or actions, behaviours or situations cause you to become defensive. And then explore it. Notice where it's coming from. Has that same behaviour played out in your life previously? What's it linked to? Can you join up the dots? Again, this is an example of using perfectionist behaviour as a coping mechanism, just like we do with alcohol. And the final sign of perfectionism is low self-esteem. And of course, if we're setting ourselves the goal of being perfect, we're never going to achieve it. It's impossible. I want you to think about being perfectly imperfect. That's a perfectly achievable goal. But if we're beating ourselves up because we're never achieving our own high standards, of course we're going to experience low self-esteem because we're never going to feel good enough. We're often going to feel like a failure. And who wants to feel like a failure? None of us are failures. We've all got good parts. We've all got parts that probably need work on, and we've all got parts in the middle. And this journey is all about learning about ourselves and understanding who we really are and what all those different parts parts look like and owning those parts, the good, the bad, the indifferent. Not setting incredibly high standards of having 100% perfect parts to us. We've all got good and bad within us. It's just about owning those things and understanding who we really are, rather than beating ourselves up because we don't feel that we're absolutely perfect. So they're the 10 signs that will give you a good indication as to whether you're a perfectionist. My hunch is you probably knew already if you were carrying out perfectionist behaviour, and you probably wouldn't have been watching this video. However, what I would like you to do, if you've identified signs of perfectionist behaviour in yourself, is to watch the next video that will show you exactly how to move through those behaviours, to let go of those behaviours, and to feel much calmer, much happier, and more at peace in your life without being plagued by perfectionist behaviour.